I love the song Trans Guys. So my name is Charlie, everyone, and I am a trans activist and author. I am Irish, but I'm London born and bred. I am a vegetarian, but I eat chicken nuggets when I'm sad. I don't tell anyone, well, I've told a lot of you now. But I'm also a Pisces, but I'm Scorpio rising. And I'm a woman, but I'm also trans, and that's what I'm going to be talking to you about today. So I'm probably best known for my campaign Nail Transphobia, which is basically a campaign where I travel around the UK with a pop-up nail salon and I offer the public free manicures for the chance to sit down and have a chat with a trans person. So while I'm doing people's nails, they can ask me questions about trans things, or we can just have a chat, but the point is that you're getting to meet a trans person because most people haven't met a trans person, but will have misconceptions about trans people, funnily enough. And that's almost like goes hand in hand. Like if they'd met a trans person, they probably wouldn't have those misconceptions. That's why I do what I do. And I thought before I go into what I do a bit more, I would tell you a bit about why I started what I do. So people are always like a bit surprised when I tell them that I've always known I was trans, because there's this rhetoric in the media, especially at the moment, which is really rife about trans children and like how does a child know they're trans? Like, but I ask you, how did you know you weren't trans when you were a child? It's the same thing with gay people. Like, how do gay people know they're gay? Like, how did you know you were straight? Like, so that's why I ask people. But like I said, I've always kind of known I was trans. I was about 4 when I started expressing to my mum that I felt trans. I obviously wasn't using the word trans because I didn't know the word trans existed. I didn't know trans people existed. And that's largely because, well, first of all, because I was a 4-year-old, and I was watching Barney and not, I don't know, the Kardashians, but because it just wasn't part of our cultural conversation. We weren't talking about trans people back in the 90s, especially on a council estate in Ladbroke Grove in West London, where I'm from. So my mum, when I was telling her, oh, Mum, I feel like a girl, my mum wasn't thinking, oh, you're trans, and taking me to a gender specialist, or just even just allowing me to like express myself, whatever. She just assumed I was going to be a gay boy, and she was really happy about that. And I was happy about that, and that was enough for me for a long time. But when puberty hit, I realized that I wasn't just feminine, I was female. And that's because my body started to change in ways that I really didn't like, and that made me really suicidal, which is a story that a lot of trans people's stories also reflect. And it wasn't until I was a teenager, so like 10 years after, so I was about 3 when I started telling my mum that I felt like a girl, and it wasn't until 10 years later when I was about 13 that I saw a trans person and finally had a word for how I felt. And that's because I saw Nadia on Big Brother. I don't know if you remember Nadia on Big Brother. She won Big Brother. She's amazing. She's actually my friend now, which I'm really gassed about. She loves Nail Transphobia, guys, so you should as well. But yeah, so I saw Nadia on Big Brother. She was a trans woman, just in case you don't know. So she was, we have this show Big Brother where everyone goes in a house. It's like a reality TV show. And it was back in the early 2000s. And it was massive because like we didn't have representation of trans people in the media back then. So her going into the house was a massive shift for society, but also a massive shift for myself, because like I said, it was the first time that I had ever seen myself reflected in media, and I think that's really sad and also really poignant, and really, I hope it drives home how important representation is, and I'm sure in your line of work you all realize how important representation is, or at least I hope you realize how important representation is. There's a lot of eye rolls when you talk about things like representation, but often the eye rolls are coming from people who have always been represented and don't know how it feels to not be represented. The fact of the matter is that I didn't ever see someone like me until I was 13, so I didn't know I could even be a trans person, because I didn't know I could transition. So it wasn't until I saw Nadia that I finally knew I was trans. But it wasn't another 10 years after that, maybe a bit less, until I finally took the leap of faith, which is really what it is, and transitioned. And that's because the lack of representation, but also the wrong representations, there was representation of trans people, but it was bad and really negative representation, and it was very like Jerry Springer, Maury, That's a Man segments, or it was when we were being played by like cis male actors as like murdered prostitutes on CSI, or it was when we were being murdered ourselves in the newspapers. So I was like, I don't want to be trans. I don't think I can hack this. And also because I had internalized years and years of, I don't know if I should say transphobia or homophobia, you call it what you want, but I had internalized a lot of, I started getting called a girl basically when I was about 7 in a mean way on my estate. and in my all-boys school, thanks, Mum. Don't know why would you send me to an all-boys school, but yeah, so I started getting bullied for being a girl, really badly bullied actually, for being effeminate when I was very young, and I had internalized that shame and that femphobia and that misogyny for years, and in such a way that I started to hate myself for being feminine. And I wish that I could have been like my brothers, my two straight brothers. I was like, why can't I be normal? Why do I have to be like this? I don't want to be bullied. Like, I just want to have a normal life. I want to feel safe. And, oh, sorry, I get a bit emotional. But yeah, so, yeah, I really didn't want to be trans. And it wasn't until, like I said, I saw Nadia that I recognized I was trans, but it wasn't another 10 years after that until I transitioned, because I didn't think I could hack it. And I had internalized so much shame about being feminine that I had tried to strip away all the feminine parts of myself so that I could assimilate. I stopped listening to music I liked. I love Britney Spears, and I started forcing myself to listen to like indie music. Sorry if anyone likes indie music in here, but that probably made me even more miserable when I was a teenager. So I started listening to indie music. I stopped dressing how I like, because I always wore girls' clothes, even pre-transition. I always wore makeup, and I stopped wearing those types of clothes and makeup. I stopped hanging around with people that I wanted to hang around with, and I took away all the parts of myself that made me feminine, but also in turn made me me, until I wasn't me anymore. And I looked in the mirror one night, and I was very, very suicidal when I was about 21. And I looked in the mirror and I thought to myself, maybe if I shave my head, because my hair had got quite long, I thought maybe I'll see the man looking back at me who I'm supposed to be. And I shaved my head, and I didn't see a man looking back at me. I saw a scared, sick little girl. I saw the eyes of a scared, sick little girl. And that's when I knew, if I don't transition, I'm going to kill myself. So I transitioned, and I'm just about still here. But I knew it was going to be the hardest thing I ever did, and that's why I didn't do it for so long. And I was right, it was the hardest thing I ever did. Everything became a fight, metaphorically, but also literally. I was attacked. I can't count how many times I was attacked. I mean, like, obviously verbally, but physically, sexually even. And one of these instances was the reason I started doing what I do. So I had just changed my name, and I was out celebrating with my friends, and I was on my way home, and I was at a packed bus stop. And these boys came up to me, and one of them was trying to flirt with me, and it was my first time having this experience of like, oh, a straight guy likes me, and I don't know how to deal with this. And I just was so scared, and I was like not answering any of his things. I was just like shaking my head because I didn't want him to hear my voice and realize. And basically, he attacked me. They attacked me. There was 3 of them, and the attack I'd been attacked so many times at that point that that's not what scarred me. What scarred me was the fact that no one else at that bus stop even cared. So it was a really packed bus stop. There was about 30 people there. And no one intervened. And I don't expect people to fight my fights for me at all. But if someone had intervened, if someone had said something like, oh, just leave her alone, no one's laughing, they would have realized, like, no one is laughing. Like, they probably would have left me alone, especially if a man like them had said something. Or if someone had even like called the police. Like, you don't have to be confrontational to be an ally. But the fact that no one did this, and the thing that hurt most, though, was the fact that no one, even once it all happened and I was left a mess, no one even came up to me and said, are you okay? No one helped me up, and that's when I realized allies are so important, not just in the fight for our rights, but in the fight for our lives, because that's honestly what a trans person's life is. It's a fight, it's a constant fight, and that's why I started Nail Transphobia. Because I recognized that there was a need for allies. I started Nail Transphobia 5 years ago, and I've traveled all around the country with it now. I took it stateside, took it to places in Europe even, and it's because I realized there was this lack of conversation was the reason for the lack of allies. Because we make up a very, very small part of the population. We're like, I think 1% of the world's population are trans, it's nothing. Actually, interesting point. In ratio to that, apparently it's every 29 hours a trans person is murdered somewhere in the world, and actually that number's probably much higher. That's only reported stats, obviously, and some countries don't give their stats, and often countries will misgender the person after death and just count them as a man who's been killed. And trans women of colour are disproportionately affected by this. It's mostly trans women of colour. And where am I going with this? I realised that the lack of conversation around trans issues was the reason that there was a lack of allies and a lack of understanding. So I wanted to have these conversations. And I was having these conversations in my everyday life with my family and friends who are all pretty much from cultures that don't understand it. So like I said, I'm from a council estate. Council estate culture is quite macho. My brothers are two manly guys. My dad is a builder. My mum was the lady in church who used to give out the bread. Like, she was a Eucharistic minister. She's Irish Catholic. I come from very working class Irish Catholic family. So I had a lot of cards stacked against me, and I had to win over a lot of people. And then even in my friendship groups, like being from Ladbroke Grove, I'm from a very culturally diverse area. None of my friends are really white. So I have a lot of friends from cultures and religions also who didn't necessarily understand either. So I was constantly having to have these conversations with people to help them understand. And I saw that that's exactly what happened when I had the conversations with them and showed them my humanity. They did understand, and it didn't take much. And I won over people, and I won over my friends, but also the thing that stood out to me most was that I won over families as well. Like, I have a friend in particular who, Kamara, she'd be the first person she's told me. She said, I was really homophobic and transphobic before I met you, before I got to know you. And even the fact that, so she would obviously been taught that homophobia and transphobia from her family. So her family are from a place where it's just not okay to be like this. And the fact of the matter is that not only have I turned her around in just getting to know me and showing my humanity, but I've also turned her family around. And her family call me part of the family now. They call me one of the sisters. They invite me for cookouts and stuff. And I just realized there's so much power in conversation. And that's why I started doing Nail Transphobia, because I wanted to have these conversations on a national scale. And that's what I do now. So I basically travel around, like I said, with a pop-up nail salon, and I offer the public free manicures for the chance to sit down and have a chat with a trans person. And the reason I use nails as my medium was because I wanted, for me, it's not about normalizing the trans issue, it's about humanizing the trans issue. And in doing someone's nails, you're essentially holding hands, and holding hands of a stranger, and I think that's really powerful. Here's me holding hands of a stranger. A stranger called Richard Branson, hey. And it's been amazing. It's been such a great opportunity for me to help people understand, and help people, most importantly, understand that there's not much to understand. I just think that's what we need more of as a society, is to be speaking more to each other, to be talking to people who aren't from the same communities as us. I think it's really important as well with what I do. It's about not speaking into echo chambers. So I have enough of a following, not being big-headed, but I have enough of a following and where I can basically do private events if I wanted to. But I never do private events with my nail pop-up. I always want them to be public-facing. I travel around to festivals and universities and museums and galleries and businesses and stuff, and I always do public events because I want it to be accessible to everyone. Sorry, I'm wearing a corset and I'm wearing a bit tight. And I had a very big breakfast today, and I'm trying to hold down my tater tots. So basically, yeah, sorry, it's literally a tater tot just came off in my mouth. So basically, yeah, where was I? So it's, about people just getting to meet a trans person and in hopes that it will create allies, because like I said, you're essentially holding hands with a trans person. If you go away after my session and you still don't like trans people and still maybe hate trans people, you're probably a sociopath, because I'm really nice. And if I'm looking in your eyes, giving you a free manicure, and you still don't like me after our little chat, like, okay, can't save you. But the point for me is about making allies. And building that emotional connection in people is what helps to build allies. Because I could sit with a table full of brochures at these festivals and museums and universities and be telling people, every 29 hours a trans person's murdered, but people, they might be like, oh, that's sad, but they're gonna go away and not care. Whereas if you sit down and make a friendship with people, people remember that. And I get people messaging me years after I've met them, because I've been doing it for 5 years now, and they'll be like, you really, really changed my mind about this, and you really helped me understand. And you just hope that it helps people, ripples make waves, basically, and hoping that though I'm only talking to one person, that one person will then, I don't know, because obviously what I do is very femme-focused. Men do come and get their nails done. Actually, the first person who ever got their nails done on my campaign was a straight guy. But you hope that they will spread the message. So, the girl will tell her boyfriend if her boyfriend's been a bit douchey when they're out, if he's like, oh, that's a man or something, she'll be like, don't say that or whatever. Or even calling things out on Facebook, if someone posts a status that's a bit douchey, or even the fact that these women are going to have kids one day, and hopefully they'll raise their kids to be decent people. So that's basically what I do. It's all about basically conversation. I don't know if I should say this because I don't want to ruin my chance of getting a brand deal with a nail brand. I'd really like that, but I don't actually care about nails. Again, don't tell anyone I said that, I like the chicken nuggets. But basically, what I do is all about conversation, and it's a way of engaging people in the conversation around trans rights who wouldn't normally be engaged. And nails are just a catalyst for that, really. And what I do is really about conversation in a bigger sense, in that, like, I'm always thinking, how can I take this conversation further? How can I get more people involved in the conversation? So I used my platform with my campaign to build a social media following, and then from that social media following, I'm able to talk to more people, obviously, and then from that social media following, I got an actual media following, so I get to write for newspapers now, I get to go on the news and talk about trans issues, so I can reach more people with the message and bring more people into the conversation. And also it's about, like I said, not speaking into echo chambers, so like when I'm doing what I'm doing, it's about reaching that like straight boy who's never met a trans girl before and might have dodgy views about us, or meeting that old lady who doesn't even know what trans means. So it's about constantly bringing people into the conversation rather than shutting out. And then I took the conversation further with my book, which came out recently. And like I said, I'm really lucky now that I get to almost, I hate the word influencer, but I get to do quite a lot of influencer stuff now, which is really cool. And it's kind of what I'm going to be talking about next, which is, because obviously it's Pride season, I thought it'd be really appropriate to talk to you guys about how to work with LGBT communities and also just minorities in general, marginalized communities, in an organic and inclusive way, and in the right way, basically. And I thought I'd use what I'm doing with my campaign to kind of facilitate that. So basically, yeah, I'm very lucky in that now, because of my following and the kind of reputation I've built up, I get to do a lot of cool stuff. So I've done campaigns for, this was for River Island last year. I'm getting the H&M's campaign that's coming out really soon for Pride. I've done campaigns for Selfridges and Google and Superdrug. I can't really, you can see my website. But basically, yeah, I'm really lucky, and I know I'm lucky, but I'm going to be talking to you more about, rather than about myself, about how to do it properly and how to, because I'm very selective. I get given the opportunity to do way more of them than I've actually done, but I often turn down a lot of them because they're just not doing it in the right way. And I want to talk to you about that. So basically, I thought I'd give you some tips on how to engage in doing campaigns and your sort of work with marginalized communities in, like I said, in the right way. So I'm going to give you 3 tips. So the first one is diversity, and that's diversity in front of the camera, but also diversity behind the camera. And diversity is a word that gets chucked around a lot, and I think people misunderstand that diversity isn't just about having gay people in a campaign or LGBT people, it's about having LGBT people of different colors or of different abilities or of different body sizes or whatever. It's about understanding that it's a tiered thing. So when I get asked to do campaigns, I will always ask, oh, who else is in this campaign? Because I'm not going to do it if it's literally just, because a lot of Pride campaigns, no offense, are just lineups of really hot gay guys, and I'm like, I'm not gonna, and often white gay guys, and I'm not gonna do that. Like, I'm not gonna affiliate myself with that. And I think it's really important to understand the importance, like I said earlier, of representation. And so I'd say that, but I would also say it's just as important to have representation and diversity behind the camera, in that you will see the effects of that in the photo, in the image, or in the film. You will see that it's been done in an organic way. You will see that, I think, because having more diversity behind the camera will mean that you don't make mistakes, because people will see those mistakes who are from those communities, that people who aren't from those communities might be blind to those mistakes. I do a lot of consultancy work at the moment with brands who are wanting to engage in kind of LGBT campaigns, and they get me in to look over things to check that it's cool and stuff, because it's very easy if you're not from that community to make mistakes, in the same way I'd maybe make mistakes about communities that I'm not part of. So it's not on you, but it is on you to work towards not making those mistakes. So that's the second point, is having diversity behind the camera. Also, just because you should have diversity behind the camera, like why should, just from a moral point of view, boardrooms shouldn't be so pale and stale and male, or whatever the saying is. No offense to everyone pale, stale, male in here. Another tater tot is coming up, guys, sorry, it's up here now. So basically, yeah, diversity, I think the next thing I always talk about is respect. And respect is in the sense of paying people. So like often, I've been offered so many Pride campaigns this year where it's literally just for free, and I'm like, are you serious? Like, what? Like also like the fact that I actually did one this year, no names, but it is for free, and I did it for free because full proceeds were going to a charity of my choice, and I don't mind that then. But to just expect people, especially from marginalised communities, who are often the work we do is often kind of very much embroiled in emotional labour, like to be talking about, so when you do these sorts of things, you're often having to do behind the scenes videos, talking about LGBT issues and talking about things like hate crime and homophobia and transphobia. It's important to pay people for that. And so I think that's part of the respect, also the respect of when we're on set, like I did a campaign for a makeup brand recently, and they obviously picked me because I'm trans, and they want to kind of ride the trans bandwagon. But then they were misgendering me all day and calling me he on set, and I was just like, why would you book me if you just don't get it? And also like, I'm not gonna then wanna sit and be pretty for a photo and smile. I couldn't smile, I was really upset, I had to go to the bathroom and cry. Like, so I just think it's really important to also respect in that sense, like if you're gonna engage in these communities, educate yourself, like, and it's not that hard to educate yourself. I think people feel like there's so many eggshells to tread on, but it's really not that hard. A good tip I always say when like people are asking how to kind of like what they can and can't ask a trans person and stuff, because there's this big like narrative of like, again, of eggshells. I always say like trans people don't want special rights, we just want human rights. We don't want to be treated any differently to anyone else, we want to be treated exactly the same. And that means like no special rights, but also means like you just wouldn't ask anyone else like what's in their underwear, especially when you first met them, or you wouldn't ask someone like what's your real name, like to any of the women who are married. Like I wouldn't say no, what's your real surname, like that's not your, that's not the one you got when you were born, sort of thing. Like, so it's things like that. You just, if you wouldn't ask someone else that question, don't ask us. So it's about educating yourself so that when you are working with marginalised communities, you're not making these mistakes and making people feel uncomfortable, because then also it's not organic, and it's not true. Like it's almost like a facade. Like if you were really wanting to be an ally to these communities and representing them, you would care about these things. And then the next thing I'm going to talk about is, what's the other letter? T, tokenism. So it's really important not to tokenize. It's a really blurry line, because it's like, I mean, it's a pride campaign. I'm a trans person, do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost tokenistic, but there's a good side to tokenism and there's a bad side. So the good side is that representation, like I said, matters. The fact that like a little trans girl who isn't 13 when she sees the first trans person, she'll be maybe like 7 and she's in Westfield and she sees this, that's amazing. She'll be like, it helps people to see themselves. But it's also about understanding that if you are going to use a community struggle to sell pride t-shirts with a rainbow on, it's important to give back to the individual, but also to the community even. Like think about like, are you giving proceeds to a charity or something? So I thought it'd be a good thing to talk about, because like I said, it is Pride season and we're gonna be seeing a million zillion rainbow t-shirts in the next couple of weeks. And I just really hope that with the sort of work you will do, that you extend your allyship to after Pride season, because in the same way of my campaign, it really is all about allyship, and I just really hope that you do that. Thank you so much.